Chapter 10 of The Cricket in Times Square by George Selden. Chapter 10 The Dinner Party. Late one night, Chester Cricket was very busy inside the newsstand. As soon as the Bellinis went home, he hopped out of the matchbox and began to clean up. First, he pushed in the box so its wides were even and then slid it over beside the alarm clock. Next, he pulled a piece of Kleenex out of the Kleenex box and dragged it back and forth across the shelf. When the shelf was dusted, he picked up the tissue in his two front legs and polished the cricket cage so its bars shone. He wiped off the glass in front of the alarm clock and the radio too until he could see his own reflection. The dial of the clock was luminous and it shed a very soft green light. Chester wanted everything to be perfect on this particular evening. There was going to be a party. It was exactly 2 months since Chester had arrived in New York, and the three animals wanted to celebrate the anniversary. Nothing too formal. Tucker Mouse had volunteered to let them use the drain pipe, but Chester didn't want to eat amid all the waste paper and rubbish his friend had collected. So after many conferences, they resolved on the newsstand. It was sheltered and quite big enough, and the radio could provide nice background music. Tucker Mouse jumped up beside Chester. "How is the food coming, Tucker?" asked the cricket. Tucker had been put in charge of refreshments. "Hick, hick, hick, hick," laughed Tucker Mouse, rubbing his front feet together. "Wait till I tell you." He lifted up one foot. "I have 2 chunks of liverwurst, 1 sliced ham, 3 pieces of bacon from a bacon, lettuce, and tomato sandwich, some lettuce and tomato from said sandwich, whole wheat, rye, and white crust, a big gob coleslaw, 2 squares from a Hershey chocolate bar, the end of an Henry candy bar with nuts. And now comes the climax," Tucker paused. "Iced soft drinks." "How did you get the ice?" asked Chester. "Wait, I'll tell you," said Tucker. "All day I've been hiding by the lunch counter. When the pseudo jerks made a coke, I grabbed the ice they spilled, which I then took to the drain pipe. There," he went on with special pride, "it happens I have a heat-proof insulated bag saved up for just such an occasion. I put in the ice, shut up the opening. We have ice. Nicey?" He sat back on his haunches and grinned at Chester. "Very nice," said Chester. "Where have you got the drinks?" "In paper cups," said Tucker. "And no mixing of drinks either. For each kind of soft drink, another cup." "That's wonderful," said the cricket with admiration. "Oh, it's nothing really," said Tucker, waving a foot. "I mean, it's something, but nothing too much." He looked around at the shelf and clock and everything. "You are to be congratulated on the cleanliness." "Of course. It isn't as important as food getting, but to be clean is very nice too." While they were talking, Harry Cat came in through the opening at the side of the newsstand. Chester hopped down like a good host to greet his new guest. "How was the concert?" he asked. Harry had been down to Washington Square to hear an open-air concert of chamber music. How you could play chamber music outdoors, Chester didn't understand. But it was New York and everything could happen. "Very good," answered Harry. "But I don't think the violinist played nearly as well as you do." It made Chester very happy to hear that, but he had to turn away so Harry wouldn't see him blush. "Harry, help me with the food," said Tucker. He jumped down to the floor and scurried over to the drain pipe. The mouse and the cat put all the different courses over to one side with the soft drinks so everyone could just go up and help himself. It was buffet style. Tucker and Chester sat on the shelf and Harry, who was taller, sat on the stool, but his head was on a level with theirs. Tucker Mouse took great pride in cooling the soft drinks. There were 4 cups, with one with Coca-Cola, one with Pepsi, one root beer, and the last orange pop. Tucker put a big piece of ice in each and then made a show of stirring them up with the straw he had found that afternoon. Ah, he sighed. Where but in New York could a mouse have ice in his Coca-Cola? We should have music, said Harry. He reached over and flicked on the radio. First, he got a news report, but that wouldn't do for a party. Harry twisted the dial and went through a quiz show, an amateur hour, and a play about the Deep South before he got what he wanted. Music is very nice for a party because it gives you time to eat. You're filled without having to make conversation. Harry Cat was working on the second piece of Oh, Henry Candy Bar when he suddenly stopped munching and listened to the tune the radio was playing. His head began to sway from side to side. That's my favorite song, he said, beginning to hum along with it. Sing it, Harry, said Chester Cricket. You don't know what you're letting yourself in for, blurted out Tucker Mouse through a mouthful of bacon, lettuce, and tomato sandwich. But Harry was in a party mode, so he cleared his throat and began, When I'm calling you, oh, 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 oh,
Why was he in a party mode?
Harry had a delightful yawl that went very well with the lyrics of the song. You see what I told you? Groaned Tucker. The cricket in Times Square. Oh no. Harry went right on. However, will you answer true?
Why he keeps saying ooh? And you know what?
He's singing.
And him, he's just looking at the rat.
I know.
And the mouse
He's in the singing mode.
And just
Harry Cat is in the
like
singing mode.
this.
Maybe we should turn back to the amateur hour, said Tucker Mouse, helping himself to the Hershey bar. I think Harry sings beautifully, said Chester. You sing now, Chester, said Harry Cat. Secretly, the cricket was very anxious to perform for them, but he had to have some encouragement first. He limbered his wings and said, It's not really singing, you know. Singing, playing, who cares, as long as it doesn't sound like Harry, said Tucker Mouse. He slurped up the last of the orange soda, and they all fell silent. It was well along in August by now, and just the time of the year that crickets all over the world like most. Chester hadn't done nearly as much chirping as usual this summer, because he was living in New York. But tonight, he played to his heart's content. He thought of his meadow and the stump, the brook and the old willow tree. The song swelled up from his wings and filled the newsstand. When it was over, Tucker and Harry applauded and congratulated Chester. Now play us something we know, suggested Harry. Well, I don't know if I can, said Chester. All my songs are my own compositions. Listen to the radio and play what it does, said Harry. He turned up the music. I wonder if Chester is ever gonna play in front of Mario, you know? And the Bellinis family.
Oh, Chester's gonna be in front
I
of
wonder
Mario?
if he does. Chester cocked his head to one side. The radio was playing the newbie waltz. When he had heard,
I don't know what it is. Maybe they can't. They can't. It seems like badass. But you know, it keeps saying, ooh, it keeps going, with the
when he
oh.
had heard enough to memorize
And
the
if it stops
melody,
saying, oh, that would be bad.
Chester joined in, and he played it perfectly. The cricket was such a natural musician that he not only chirped the tune. In a few minutes, he was making up variations and spinning them out without ever losing the rhythm of the waltz. He found that by tilting his wings, he could make the notes go higher or lower, just as he wanted. Chester got an ovation from his friends Harry Cat, who had crept into the Metropolitan Opera House a few times and knew how people acted there. Shouted, Bravo, Chester! Bravo! Of course, after such a sample of his talent for imitating songs, his friends insisted that he keep on. and Chester was happy to oblige. There's nothing like a good audience to encourage a performer. The next selection from the radio was a group of Italian folk songs. Chester picked out the different melodies and chirped them along with the orchestra. After the folk songs came a group of operatic arias. It was easier for Chester to play the ones written for tenors than the ones for sopranos, contraltos, and basses, but he did them all beautifully. Each time he stopped after singing a new piece, the animal shouted, "More, more, more." So Chester went right on. Now came a South American rumba. The rhythm was very tricky, and it took the cricket a few minutes to catch on to it. But once he had it, he never lost the beat. Chirping away, he sounded like a pair of lively castanets. "Imagine!" exclaimed Tucker Mouse. "He plays pop as well as classical." Tucker was feeling very lively himself because of all the soda water he had swallowed. The South American tempo began to excite him. He jumped up and started to dance around the shelf. Harry Cat burst out laughing, but that didn't bother Tucker. He was a carefree soul. "Chester can play. I can dance," he panted. "We should go into vaudeville." "If you danced as well as he played, you could," said Harry. "So I'm just learning," said Tucker, and threw himself into a wild twirl next to Papa Bellini's pipe. He couldn't see where he was going, and he toppled over into the box of kitchen matches. The box flipped over. A shower of matches fell around the shelf and onto the cement floor. There were several yellow bursts and the sharp scratch that a match makes when it's lit. Most of them fell far enough away from the wooden wall so they could burn themselves out without danger. But one match, unluckily, struck right next to a pile of that morning's newspapers. Uh-oh, they're burning the whole Bellini store. The spurt of flames it sent up lit the frayed edge of the papers and quickly spread over the whole bundle. "Watch out!" shouted Chester. Harry Cat leaped up to the shelf just in time to keep his tail from being burned. The cricket was the first to realize what had happened
Oh no.
and what was likely to happen if they didn't put the fire out.
Why's he laughing?
No, they're trying to save the newspaper. It's going in flame.
Oh, but what is he doing with
They're
that?
trying to save the newspaper from getting burned.
Oh, they are.
Get the Coca-Cola," he said. "Pour it over." "I drank it all," shouted Tucker. "You would," said Chester. "Is there any ice?" Harry and Tucker dumped what was left in the insulated bag down on the flames, but it wasn't enough. The fire sputtered, died down, and then flared up again, larger than ever. "Maybe we can smother it," said Harry. There was a pile of magazines on the very edge of the shelf, just above the fire. Harry strained and pushed and succeeded in toppling them over. They all peered over the edge to see if the fire was out. "Oh, fine," said Tucker. "She's still burning, and you blocked the hole to get out." They were trapped. Harry and Tucker jumped down and started pulling away the magazines furiously, but the fire crept closer and they had to back away. "What a way to go," said Tucker. "I should have stayed on 10th Avenue." For a moment Chester got panicky, but he forced his thoughts back into order and took stock of the situation. And an idea struck him. In one leap he jumped onto the alarm clock, landing right on the bottom that set off the alarm. The old clock began ringing so wildly it shook itself around the shelf in a mad dance. Chester hopped back to his friends. "Any alarm in a fire," he said. They waited crouched against the wall on the opposite side of the stand, and the flames were lapping against the wood. Already the paint on it had begun to blister. Chester could hear voices outside the newsstand. Even at this hour there were always a few people in the station. Somebody said, "What's that?" "I smell smoke," said another. Chester recognized the voice. It was Paul, the conductor in the shuttle. There was a sound of footsteps running away, then running back again, and a hammering began. The newsstand shook all over. "Somebody get the other side," said Paul. The cover was wrenched off. Clouds of smoke billowed. The people standing around were astonished to see through the fumes and glare of the fire a cat, a mouse, and a cricket running, jumping to safety. Chapter 11. The Jinx. From the drain pipe, the animals watched Paul put out the fire. He dragged what papers he could out of the newsstand and got a bucket of water to dose the rest, and he watered down the walls to make sure they wouldn't flare up later. When the danger was over, he called up Papa Bellini on the telephone. "What a mess," said Tucker Mouse, looking at the soggy, smoldering piles of papers and magazines. No one knew what to say. "What are you going to do, Chester?" said Harry Cat, finally. "I'm going back there," said Chester. "If the Bellinis find me gone, they'll think I set the fire and run." "What makes you think they will think you set the fire and stayed?" said Tucker. "I'll have to take that chance," said Chester. Before the cat or the mouse could say anything to stop him, he hopped over to the newsstand. Paul had told the engineer that he would miss a few trips on the shuttle and was waiting for the Bellinis. He didn't want anyone monkeying with the cash register while the cover was off. The conductor thought that the cups and the bags from the animals' party had been left by Mario or Papa. While he was taking them over to a trash barrel, Chester jumped up on the shelf. Nothing there had been burned, but there was a smoky smell to everything. The cricket took a downhearted leap into the cage and settled himself for whatever might come. It didn't take the Bellinis long to arrive. They had taken a taxi, and when the Bellinis took a taxi, you could be sure it was an emergency. Chester could hear them hurrying down the steps from the street. Papa was trying to soothe Mama, who was wheezing heavily from asthma and excitement. When she saw the heaps of scorched magazines and newspapers, she began to moan and shake her head. Papa eased her down onto the stool, but it was still covered with water, and she stood up again with a wet spot on her skirt. "Ruined. We're ruined," she sobbed. "Everything's burned." Papa comforted her as best as he could by saying that it was only a few stacks of the Ladies' Home Journal that had been lost. But Mama wouldn't believe that anything less than complete destruction had come to them all. Mario, who brought up the rear of this sad parade, thought first for the safety of his cricket. He saw that Chester was in his cage, though, and decided that it would be best to keep quiet until Mama's outburst of grief had subsided. Paul told them what had happened, how he smelled smoke and heard the alarm clock ringing. Then he came to a part about the animals who had escaped from the burning newsstand. "So," said Mama Bellini, all her despair changing into anger. "Animals in the newsstand again! Didn't I tell you?" She lifted her forefinger at Mario. "Didn't I say the cricket would ask in his pals? He probably set the fire. He's a firebug." Mario didn't have a chance to speak. He would open his mouth to defend Chester, but before he could say a thing, the words were drowned in Mama's flood of reproaches. She had found someone on whom she could blame her unhappiness, and there was no stopping her. When a pause came, Mario said meekly, "My cricket would never do anything like burn up our newsstand." "The fact remains," said Mama. "We had a fire." "But crickets are good luck," Mario began. "Good luck?" said Mama indignantly. "He eats Mary. He commits arson. He's a jinx. That's what. He's good luck going backwards, and he's got to go." She folded her arms across her chest. It was an attitude that Mario knew meant the absolute end of everything. "I could keep him somewhere else," the boy offered. "No," said Mama, shaking her head as firmly as door being closed. "He's a jinx. He goes." Papa put his finger to his lips as a signal that Mario shouldn't say anything more, and the two of them began to clean up. They carted away all the hopelessly burned magazines and tried to salvage some that had only been scorched. Mario mopped the floor of the newsstands while Mama spread out papers to dry. By the time they were finished, it was almost the hour for the first wave of commuters. Chester was lying on the floor of the cricket cage. He felt guilty, because even if he hadn't said it in a way the fire was his fault, if he hadn't invited everyone into the newsstand, it wouldn't have happened. And it was his playing of the rumba that had made Tucker want to dance, and so tip over the matches, and he did it the $2 bill. He began to believe that he really was a jinx. During the early morning rush hour, Mario was especially eager in his shouts of paper, Mr. and time of or life, Mr. Papa was more active than usual too, but Mama sat glumly in the stall with a gray, determined look on her face. Despite the fact that the sailing that morning went very well, she wouldn't change her mind. After the rush was over, Papa went out to buy a new lock. Chester heard a soft scratching from behind the clinic's box. A familiar face picked up. "What's going on?" whispered Tuckermouse. "Are you crazy?" said Chester under his breath. "All they need is to catch you here." "I had to find out how you were doing," said Tucker. "They're going to throw me out," sighed Chester. "Uh-oh," Tucker moaned. "And it was me that did it. Supposing I gave you the rest of my life savings, maybe we could buy them off." Chester leaned his black little head up against the bars of the cricket cage. "Not this time," he said. "Mama's got her mind made up. I don't blame her either. I wish I'd never come to New York." "Oh, Chester," wailed Tucker Mouse, "don't say that. You'll make me feel like a rat. And I'm only a mouse." "It's not your fault, Tucker," said Chester. "But I've been nothing but bad luck to them since I came." Without knowing what he was doing, the cricket began to chirp to ease his feelings. He found that it helped somehow if you sang your sadness. He wasn't paying much attention, and just by accident, he played the first few notes of an Italian folk song he had heard the night before. It was so melancholy and yet so sweet that it fitted his mood exactly. Mama Bellini was untying a bundle of Herald Tribunes when she heard the chirping. At first, she didn't know what it was. "Chico si questa?" she said in Italian, which means, "What's that?" Chester stopped playing. "Chi cantava?" said Mama. "Who was singing?" Mario looked at his mother. Usually when she spoke in Italian, it meant that she was in a good mood. But that couldn't be true today. Now Tucker Mouse was a very good judge of character, both animal and human, he thought. He heard a kind of softness in Mama Bellini's voice. "Play some more," he whispered to Chester. "She hates me," said Chester. "I'll only make her more angry." "Do as I tell you," commanded the mouse urgently. So Chester started to chirp again. He was in such disgrace anyway. What difference could it make? The piece he was playing was called "Come Back to Sorrento," and by the greatest good luck it happened to be Mama Bellini's favorite song. Back in Naples, Italy, when Papa was courting her before they came to America, he used to come beneath her window on a moonlit night and sing his ballad to the plunking of an old guitar. As the cricket chirped, the whole scene came back to Mama. The still, warm night, the moon shining down on the velvety bay of Naples, and Papa singing to her. Tears welled up in her eyes as she thought of the bygone times, and very softly she began to murmur the words to the song. Chester Cricket had never played with so much skill before. When he heard Mama singing, he slowed his tempo so she could keep up without straining. When she was loud, he was too, and then softer when she got choked up with emotion and her voice dwindled. But always his chirping carried her along, keeping her on the right beat and the right tune. He was the perfect accompanist. Mario was dumbfounded. He started astonished at the cricket cage and then at his mother. It was just as marvelous for his mother to be singing as it was for a cricket to chirp familiar songs. Sometimes when she was very happy, Mama Bellini whistled, and once or twice Mario had heard her hum. But now Here she was crying and warbling like an Italian nightingale. Chester finished. Come back to surrender. Keep it up, squeaked Tuckerboss. She's a sucker for sad songs. Before Mama's mood had a change to wear off, Chester began chirping the selections from opera that he had played during the party. Mama didn't know the words to the operas, but she hummed some of the tunes along with him. Mario was as still as stone. Papa Bellini came back from the locksmith. Coming down the stairs, he was surprised not to hear his wife and Mario calling out the newspapers. But when he got near the newsstand, he was even more surprised to hear the strains of the Grand March from Aida coming from the cricket cage. "He chirps opera?" exclaimed Papa. His eyes looked as big and startled as two hard-boiled eggs. "Shh!" said Mama with a wave of her hand. Chester's memory for music was perfect. He had to hear a piece only once to remember it forever. When he had finished all the operatic numbers, he stopped. "Should I go on with the pop tunes?" he whispered to Tucker Mouse, who was still hidden behind the Kleenex box. "Wait a while," said Tucker. "See what happens." Mama Bellini had a dreamy look in her eyes. She put her arm around her son and said, "Mario, no cricketer who sings Torna Sorrento's so beautifully could possibly start a fire. He can stay a while longer." Mario threw his arms around his mother's neck. "You hear? You hear?" squealed Tucker Mouse. "You can stay. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, and this is only the beginning. I'll be your manager, okay?" "Okay," said Chester, and so began the most remarkable week in Chester's Cricket's or any cricket's life. Chapter 12, Mr. Smedley. It was 2 o'clock in the morning. Chester Cricket's new manager, Tucker Mouse, was pacing up and down in front of the cricket cage. Harry Cat was lying on the shelf with his tail dropping over the edge, and Chester himself was relaxing in the matchbox. "I have been giving the new situation my serious consideration," said Tucker Mouse solemnly. "As a matter of fact, I couldn't think of anything else all day. The first thing to understand is, Chester Cricket is a very talented person." "Here, here," said Harry. Chester smiled at him. He was really an awfully nice person, Harry Cat was. "The second thing is, talent is something rare and beautiful and precious, and it must not be allowed to go to waste." Tucker cleared his throat. "And the third thing is, there might be, who could tell, a little money in it, maybe." "I knew that was at the bottom of it," said Harry. "Now wait, please, Harry. Please, just listen a minute. Before you begin calling me a greedy rodent," said Tucker. He sat down beside Chester and Harry. "The newsstand is doing lousy business, right?" "Right. If the Bellinis were happy, Mama Bellini wouldn't be always wanting to get rid of him, right?" "Right. She likes him today because he played her favorite songs, but who can tell how she might like him tomorrow?" "And also I'd like to help them because they've been so good to me," put in Chester Cricket. "But naturally," said Tucker, "and if a little bit of the rewards of success should find its way into a drain pipe where lives an old and trusted friend of Chester, well, who is the worse for that?" "I still don't see how we can make any money," said Chester. "I haven't worked out the details," said Tucker. "But this I can tell you. New York is a place where the people are willing to pay for talent. So what's clear is, Chester has got to learn more music. I personally prefer his own compositions. No offense, Chester." "Oh no," said the Cricket. "I do myself. But the human beings," Tucker went on, "being what human beings are, and who can blame them, would rather hear pieces written by themselves." "But how am I going to learn new songs?" asked Chester. "Easy as pie," said Tucker Mouse. He darted over to the radio, leaned all his weight on one of the dials, and snapped it on. "Not too loud," said Harry Cat. "The people outside will get suspicious." Tucker twisted the dial until a steady soft stream of music was coming up. "Just play it by ear," he said to Chester. That was the beginning of Chester's formal musical education. On the night of the party he had just been playing for fun, but now he seriously set out to learn some human music. Before the night was over, he had memorized 3 movements from different symphonies, half a dozen songs from musical comedies, the solo part for a violin concerto, and 4 hymns, which he picked up from the late religious service. The next morning, which was the late Sunday in August, all 3 Belinas came to open the newsstand. They could hardly believe what had happened yesterday, and were anxious to see if Chester would continue to sing familiar songs. Mario gave the cricket his usual breakfast of mulberry leaves and water, which Chester took his time eating. He could see that everyone was very nervous, and he sort of enjoyed making them wait. When breakfast was over, he had a good stretch and limbered his wings. Since it was Sunday, Chester thought it would be nice to start with a hymn, so he chose to open his concert with Rock of Ages. At the sound of the first notes, the faces of Mama and Papa and Mario broke into smiles. They looked at each other and their eyes told how happy they were, but they didn't dare to speak a word. During the pause after Chester had finished Rock of Ages, Mr. Smedley came up to the newsstand to buy his monthly copy of Musical America. His umbrella, neatly folded, was hanging over his arm as usual. "Hey, Mr. Smedley, my cricket plays hymns," Mario blurted out even before the music teacher had a chance to say good morning. "And opera," said Papa. "An Italian song," said Mama. "Well, well, well," said Mr. Smedley. "Who didn't believe a word, of course. I see we've all become very fond of our cricket. But aren't we letting our imagination run away with us a bit?" "Oh, no," said Mario. "Just listen. He'll do it again." Chester took a sip of water and was ready to play some more. This time, however, instead of Rock of Ages, he launched onto a stirring performance of Onward Christian Soldiers. Mr. Smedley's eyes popped. His mouth hung open and the colorful drained from his face. "Do you want to sit down, Mr. Smedley?" asked Papa. "You look a little pale." "I think perhaps I'd better," said Mr. Smedley, wiping his forehead with a silk handkerchief. "It's rather a shock, you know." He came inside the newsstand and sat on the stool so his face was just a few inches away from the cricket cage. Chester chirped the second verse of Onward Christian Soldiers and finished with a soaring "Amen." "Why, the organist played that in church this morning," he exclaimed. The music teacher breathlessly. "And it didn't sound half as good. Of course, the cricket isn't as loud as an organ, but what he lacks in volume, he makes up for in sweetness." "That was nothing," said Papa Bellini proudly. "You should hear him play Aida." "May I try an experiment?" asked Mr. Smedley. All the Bellinis said "Yes" at once. The music teacher whistled the scale. "Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do." Chester flexed his legs and as quickly as you could ran your fingers up the strings of a harp. He had played the whole scale. Mr. Smedley took off his glasses. His eyes were moist. "He has absolute pitch," he said in a shaky voice. "I have met only one other person who did. She was a soprano named Arabella Heffelfinger." Chester started to play again. He went through 2 other hymns he'd learned, "The Rosary" and "A Mighty Fortress is Our God," and then did the violin concerto. Naturally, he couldn't play it just as it was written with a whole orchestra to back him up, but he was magnificent, all things considered. Once Mr. Smedley got used to the idea that he was listening to a concert given by a cricket, he enjoyed the performance very much. He had special praise for Chester phrasing, by which he meant the neat way the cricket played all the notes of a passage without letting them slide together. And sometimes, when he had been deeply moved by a section, the music teacher would touch his chest over his heart and say, "That cricket has it here." As Chester chirped his way through the program, a crowd collected around the newsstand. After each new piece, the people applauded and congratulated the Bellinis on their remarkable cricket. Mama and Papa were fit to burst with pride. Mario was very happy too. But of course, he had thought all summer that Chester was a very unusual person. When the playing was over, Mr. Smedley stood up and shook his hands with Papa, Mama, and Mario. I want to thank you for the most delightful hour I have ever spent, he said. The whole world should know of this, Cricket. A light suddenly spread over his face. Why, I believe I shall write a letter to the music editor of the New York Times, he said. They'd certainly be interested. And this is the letter Mr. Smedley wrote. To the music editor of the New York Times and to the people of New York. Rejoice, O New Yorkers, for a musical miracle has come to pass in our city. This very day, Sunday, August 28th, surely a day which will go down in musical history, it was my pleasure and privilege to be present at the most beautiful recital ever heard in a lifetime devoted to the sublime art. Music, that is. Being a musicologist myself and having graduated with honors from a well-known local school of music, I feel I am qualified to judge such matters, and I say without hesitation that never have such strains been heard in New York before. But who was the artist? The eager music lover will ask. Was it perchance some new singer just lately arrived from a triumphant tour of the capitals of Europe? No, music lovers, it was not. Then was it some violinist who pressed his cheek with love against his darling violin as he played? Wrong again, music lovers. Could it have been a pianist with sensitive long fingers that drew magic sounds from the shining ivory keys? Ah, music lovers, you will never guess. It was a cricket. A simple cricket, no longer than half my little finger, which is rather long because I play the piano, but a cricket that is able to chirp operatic, symphonic, and popular music. Am I wrong, then, in describing such an event as a miracle? And where is this extraordinary performer? Not in a Carnegie Hall, music lovers, not in the Metropolitan Opera House. You will find him in the newsstand run by the Bellini family in the subway station at Times Square. I urge, I implore every man, woman, and child who has music in his soul not to miss one of his illustrious, nay, his glorious concerts. Enchantedly yours, Horatio P. Smedley. P.S. I also give piano lessons for information. Write to H.P. Smedley, 1578 West 63rd Street, New York, New York. Chapter 13, Fame. The music editor of the New York Times was quite surprised to get Mr. Smedley's letter, but he believed in the freedom of the press and had it printed on the theatrical and musical page of the paper. The next morning, thousands of people at home over the breakfast table and on buses and trains coming into New York. Read about Chester. The Bellinis got to the newsstand very early. Papa opened the Times bundle and thumbed through a copy looking for the letter. When he found it, he read it aloud to Mama and Mario. Then he folded the paper and put it back on the stack to be sold. So, said Papa, we have a celebrity in our midst. The celebrity was just at that moment having himself a big yawn in the cricket cage. He had been up most of the night with his manager and Harry Cat learning new pieces. After eating breakfast and having another stretch, he tested his wings against each other like a violinist making sure that his violin is in tune. The wings were fine. This time of year they almost itched to chirp. Chester ran over the scales a few times and started to play. His first selection was something he had heard the night before called a little night music. It was by a man named Mozart. Chester and Tucker and Harry had all been delighted by a little night music. They thought it was a very good piece for the cricket to learn because they had heard it first at night, and also because Chester was quite a little person himself. It was lovely music too, with little tunes that sounded like insects hopping around and having a grand time. As Chester played, the station began to fill up with the unusual commuters. People collected around the newsstand, some drawn by the chirping and others because they wanted to see the cricket they'd read about. And as always in New York, when a little crowd formed, more people came just to see what the others were looking at. Bees do that, and so do human beings. Somebody asked who was playing. A cricket, a man answered. Oh, stop joking, the first man said, and burst out laughing. In front of him, a little lady with a feather in her hat, who was enjoying the music, turned around and whispered, Shh, very angrily. In another part of the station, a man was reading Mr. Smedley's letter, and two other men were also reading it over his shoulders. My gosh, said the one on the right. A cricket! Who would have believed it? It's a fake, said the man on the left. Probably a record. The man in the middle who owned the paper snapped his shut. It isn't a fake, he said. It's a little living creature and it sings beautifully. I'm going to give up my season ticket to the Philharmonic. Everywhere people were talking and arguing and listening to Chester. Mario made a pile of old magazines and put the cricket cage on top of them so everyone could see better and hear more clearly. When Chester finished one number, a shout of "More! More!" rang through the station. The cricket would catch his breath, have a sip of water, flick his wings, and begin a new selection as fast as he could.
I'm watching the ball.
And the crowd grew and grew.
It's almost over.
Mama Bellini had never seen such a crowd around the newsstand. But she wasn't one to be so dazed by good fortune that she missed out on such a chance. Taking a bundle of the Times under one arm, she worked her way around, murmuring softly so as not to disturb the music lovers.
Book over?
Almost done. Read about the cricket, read about the cricket. It's in the New York Times. Alright. People snapped up the papers like candy. Mama had to keep going back to the newsstand for new loads. And in less than half an hour, the whole stack of the Time had been sold. Don't sit with your eyes shut, Mama whispered to Papa. Papa Bellini was one of those people who enjoy listening to music with their eyes closed. She put a bunch of Musical America into his arms. Try this, it's a good time now, Papa sighed, but did as she asked him, and in a little while all the copies of Musical America were gone too. It is safe to say that there had never been such an interest in music in the Times Square subway station as there was on that morning. Over in the drain pipe, Tucker Mouse and Harry Cat were listening too. Harry with his eyes closed like Papa Bellini. There were so many human beings that they couldn't even see the newsstand, but they could hear Chester chirping away. On the other side of all the heads and legs and backs, his clear notes filled the station. Didn't I tell you? Said Tucker between pieces. Look at them all. There's a fortune in this. I wish one of us was big enough to pass the hat. But Harry only smiled. He was happier right where he was, just sitting, enjoying the music. And the crowd kept on growing. That first day alone, there were 783 people late to work because they had stopped to listen to Chester. During the next few days, other papers besides the Times began to run articles on the cricket. Even Musical America sent an assistant editor down to hear a recital.
Why is everybody going for Chester's muse?
Because he played so well. And Chester was news on radio and television. All the announcers were talking about the remarkable insect who was delighting throngs in the Times Square subway station. The Bellinis decided that the best time for Chester to play were early in the morning and late in the afternoon since that was when the station was fullest. Concerts began at 8 a.m. and 4:30 p.m. and usually lasted an hour and a half, not including encores. Business boomed at the newsstand. Mama made sure that extra loads of magazines and newspapers were delivered. But even so, by closing time, they had sold out completely. Mama Bellini, by the way, turned out to be the best friend a cricket ever had. At noon, she would rush home and fix Chester some delicacy for lunch, like a midget fruit salad or an entire vegetable dinner so small you could serve it on a silver dollar. Chester really preferred his mulberry leaves, but he ate everything so as not to hurt her feelings. Sai Fong, who had seen Chester's picture in the paper, kept Mario supplied with leaves. He and the Chinese gentleman dug out two collapsible chairs from his attic and came uptown every day at 8 and 4:30 to hear Chester's new programs. Mr. Smedley was there at least once a day, too. He brought a tape recorder and made recordings of all the new pieces Chester learned. And during the intermissions, there was always an intermission of 10 minutes halfway through the concert. He delivered short talk on musical appreciation to the audience. So by Thursday, Chester Cricket was the most famous musician in New York City. But now here is a strange thing. He wasn't really happy. Not the way.
Why wasn't he happy?
Maybe because he's tired. He's been playing so much. Not the
Oh,
way he
wow.
used to.
Oh, everybody likes his music, but he's tired. He keeps playing and playing. They want to see him more and more.
I know. Now he's so tired. Life didn't seem to have the fun and freedom it had before. For one thing, although he thought the glory was very nice, Chester found that it made you tired. 2 concerts a day, every day, was an exhausting program, and he wasn't used to playing on schedule. Back home in the meadow, if the sun felt nice or the moon was full, or if he wanted to have a musical conversation with his friends, the lark, he would chirp because the mood was on him. But here he had to begin performing at 8 and 4:30 whether he felt like it or not. Of course, he was very glad to be helping the Bellinis, but a lot of the joy was gone from his playing. And there was something else. Chester didn't like being looked at. It wasn't so bad while he was playing. Everyone was quiet, enjoying the music, but after the performance was over, the human beings crowded around and put their faces down close to the bars and poked their fingers through. Souvenir hunters had taken his paper cup and even the pieces of mulberry leaves that were left over. Chester knew they didn't mean any harm, but he couldn't get used to the idea that millions of eyes were staring at him. It got so bad that when the concerts were over, he took to crawling into the matchbox and pushing up a piece of Kleenex to block the entrance. Then, on Thursday, 3 things happened that upset him very much. The first was September. It was the first day of a new month. Chester happened to glance up at the top of a copy of the Times, where the date was, and there he saw September 1, a new month, and a new season too. Autumn was almost upon them. For some reason, the thought of September, with all its changes, made Chester feel very small and lost.
Well, why is it's a new month? Why is he mad that it's a new month?
I don't know, he's getting mad. And that evening, while he was playing, a brown leaf, the first leaf of the fall, blew into the station and landed right next to the cricket cage. Now this leaf had come from New Jersey. A playful gust of wind danced it over and the Hudson River, and up 42nd Street and whisked it down the subway entrance. Chester was in the middle of a song when the leaf came down. It was such a shock to see this little reminder of all that was happening in the country, that for a moment he couldn't continue. But then he realized where he was and forced himself to go on. Mario was the only one who noticed the break in the playing. But the worst thing happened after the concert was over. Chester was leaning up against the matchbox when suddenly 2 fingers began to work their way through the bars of the cage toward the little silver bell. They weren't Mama's fingers or Papa's or Mario's. Chester knew the hands of the Bellinis. Somebody was trying to steal the bell. The cricket chirped an alarm just as the man was about to pull it down. Papa turned around, saw what was happening, and shouted, "Hey, what are you doing?" The man disappeared into the crowd. Mama and Mario had been outside selling off the last of the day's papers. They came running back to the newsstand. "What is it?" panted Mama. "A thief," said Papa. "Is my cricket all right?" asked Mario anxiously. "Yes," said Papa. "He's in the matchbox." Mario picked up the matchbox and looked in. There was Chester, piling a Kleenex against the opening. "You can come out now," the boy said. "It's safe." But Chester wouldn't come out. Mario had noticed that the cricket took to hiding after each recital, and it worried him. Mama Bellini was convinced that the man was a kidnapper, or rather, cricket napper. Not just a thief, but Papa told them how he had been going straight for the bell. That bill belongs to my cricket, said Mario. Mr. Fong gave it to him. He unfastened the bill and put it away back in the cash register drawer, next to Mama's earring so it wouldn't tempt anyone else. Chester was still hiding in the matchbox. Mario gently pulled the Kleenex away and whispered, "Please come out." Chester stirred and chirped, but stayed where he was. "What's the matter with him?" said Papa. "I think he may be sick," said Mario. He coaxed Chester with
It's
a mulberry
almost
leaf. The
over,
cricket
right?
poked his head out of the matchbox. When he saw that the crowds had broken up, he jumped into the palm of Mario's hand.
Mom, when's this
"You should
book
take him
over?
to a bug doctor,"
People
said Mama.
wants this book to get over. I don't know why.
Yeah, I'm gonna be the end. This is the last page for this chapter. "You should take him to a bug doctor," said Mama. "What do you call them?" "Entomologist," said Mario, holding the leaf for Chester to nibble. "Take him to an entomologist," said Mama. "He might just be tired," said Papa. "We could give him a rest for a few days." Chester had eaten as much of the leaf as he wanted. He gave a short chirp for thank you and jumped back in the box. "He isn't happy anymore," said Mario. "How do you know?" said Mama. "I can tell," said Mario. "I know how I'd feel if I were a cricket." Mario put the matchbox in the cricket cage. "Next week school begins," he said. "You've got to promise you'll take good care of him while I'm not here." "We will, Mario," said Papa. "We like him too. You know." The boy stood looking down at the cage. His forehead was drawn together in a worried frown. "I almost wish he hadn't come to New York if he isn't going to be happy here," he said finally. Chester heard him and thought about what he had said. He thought about it while the Bellinis were feeding on the cover, and later in the darkness after they'd gone home, he was still thinking about it. Then quickly, like a lock snapping into place, something was decided in his mind. Chester felt very relieved after the decision had been made. He sighed, and his wings and his legs all relaxed as he waited there for Tucker Mouse.
I told you that's the last page.
Alright, now it still has more chapter. I think it's up to
Chapter 15.
it's up to page 133. So it has 20 pages. We'll read it tomorrow.